Hi there everyone, it's Joe, welcome back to my channel, and before anything, let me just go out on a limb and mention to anyone that's in the UK, it's hot. It's really hot, so I'm just going to wear a tank top, and forgive the fact that I'm not as, more dressed as usual, but never mind. But we're going to cool off with some ice water shenanigans here, because that's partly why I needed to get that pun in there, I'm sorry. But this is actually a deck that I've been really excited to show people for a good 3 or 4 weeks, since Opus VI came out, or since at least we've seen all the cards, because there's one card in the set that I'm super excited to showcase, and that's Rinoa. And I think this card is incredibly good, and I know that quite a few people out there are experimenting with Rinoa, experimenting with Layla and Viking, experimenting with Nidhogg, which in all honesty, when I first did my early impressions review of the set, I said Nidhogg didn't impress me all that much. I was wrong. I will hold up my hands and say I was so wrong. In this deck, this card is insane. So I'm just going to go straight into the deck list, and I hope that you guys really enjoy it, because I have tested this. When I've been going to various events and stuff across the UK, because I've been promoting the game for Square Enix, I've been to Manchester, I've been to London, I've been to various other places, and I'm hoping to go to various different stores across the UK. So if you guys, want some demonstrations or stuff down in your local store, then, let me know, hit me up in the messages, or check out my Facebook page and hit me a message there, and you never know, I might be able to come down. So anyways, let's get straight into the deck list. And this deck has got 22 forwards in it, which is a normal kind of number, but a lot of the forwards in this deck are actually kind of designed to prolong your opponent to get to the late game, because that's where this deck really shines. And one of the biggest things about this is it's like small standard unit engine. So you have 3 Thaumaturge in the deck, which I know is a card that a lot of people don't like because it's too cheap for what it does. And in honesty, it kind of is. But something that you can get down early that's going to discard cards in your opponent's hand and apply pressure is just a really, really good card. So I'm definitely going to run 3 of it here. And it's also searchable through Bran, and it's also, you can grab it out of your break zone through Gladiator. It just makes a lot of sense in this deck. And then the star of the show for this deck is Rinoa, where we've got so many different come into play effects that it's, she's just an all-star here. And honestly, this is probably my favorite card in the entirety of Opus VI. So honestly, even if you're not playing it in this particular deck, there are so many options that you have for Rinoa. Go out and play with her. If you've managed to pick up 2 or 3 copies of her, go and find reasons to run her, because she's so much fun and she's very powerful. And then we've got 2 copies of Genesis. Now, I've only gone with 2 copies here because I think that I wanted to keep the consistency as close together as I could. And because we have 2 Devout in the deck, in the backup line, I felt that 2 Genesis was possibly necessary, or it was all that was necessary. You could change it around so you had 3, but I think that because we don't have an awful lot of kind of dull and freeze effects in here, you're primarily using him for the extra discard when he does get a hit in. He's still just a really good card though, and in combination with things like Glacial Abolus, he just does so much work it's hard to ignore him. And then 1 copy of Sid Reigns. Now, since Opus 1, I've been wanting a reason to use this combo and it work, and this deck is the perfect place to put it. And it's Sid Reigns and Scholar, or in this case you have Sid Reigns and Rinoa, or you have Sid Reigns and Leviathan, and there's so many ways to get it off. It's getting the ability to play down Sid Reigns twice in a turn. Sid Reigns is treated like a separate entity each time it comes into play or leaves play and then comes back in again, because obviously it leaves a public zone and then it's treated like a second time. So if you're playing it once and then use its ability to deal 4,000 damage to a dull forward, and then it sets up a floating ability that if that forward is broken, your opponent discards a card. So if it then leaves and comes back in again, it sets up that ability again, so that if it does break something, then your opponent has to discard twice, because you've used 2 Sid Reigns on it. And that's really, really powerful, and it works brilliantly in combination with Rinoa or Leviathan or Scholar. So to be able to play that combo in this deck and it work is really, really good. But I've only gone with 1 because I think that it's nice in combination with Glacial Abolus, and the combo with Scholar, etc. is nice, but it's not hugely necessary. So I just wanted to put a copy in here, mostly because I do think it is powerful when it goes off, but it's not mandatory. So 1 copy works fine. And then a copy of Vayne, because we have Devouts in here, and massive guys are a bit of a problem for this deck because a lot of our guys are much smaller. So having an ability to kind of lock them out is worthwhile. You could put a second Vayne in here if you wanted to. There's no reason why you couldn't, but I do think that 1 with Devout is probably enough here. And then going into water forwards, I think that honestly Cloud of Darkness is probably one of the strongest cards in Opus 5, and this deck is her perfect home. You have your Viking and Lila to be able to, build board advantage so easily. And then Rinoa in Cloud of Darkness puts in an incredible amount of work. You know, I toyed with a couple of ideas with this deck of things that are like in-game plays. Like, I know that I'm not the only person that thought Kefka would go really, really well in this deck, but I tried Kefka and I liked it, but I felt that just having Cloud of Darkness and Nidhogg do the legwork was actually enough. So I think that just stick with the consistency, 3 copies of Cloud of Darkness. If you get her down, you have a Layla and Viking out, then great, or if you have more than that, because you have plenty of cards that are just there. So your Thaumaturges after they've been used, your Sid Reigns after he's been used. Genesis is a great, like, you know, just something to stick around. And once you attack with it and then you play a Rinoa to kind of flicker it out and then back in again, it just wrecks your opponent's board so fast. It's brilliant, and because you have your gladiators, you can just quickly grab something back out, or, you know, it's so easy to accumulate like numbers of of forwards that you'd be so shocked how well Cloud of Darkness does in here. And then the Affirmationed Viking and Layla is part of the backbone of the deck. The idea I had when I first came out with it is I thought Layla was great from the second I saw her. I was so excited to play her. And then when Rinoa came around, I'm like, okay, you know, I did figure out, like, you know, Rinoa and Nidhogg are together, but then, you know, other people were like, oh, well, this is really powerful. And I thought, well, how do you accumulate the advantage enough so that you can then warrant playing the Nidhogg and then Rinoa? And then I thought, well, hold on, Viking and Layla are both fantastic targets for Rinoa as well. If you do it on Viking, you draw 2 cards. If there were a 4 CP forward that was 7,000 power and drew you 2 cards when it came in, it would be played in everything. That's basically what Rinoa does if you're using it on a Viking. And if you're doing it on a Layla, you're drawing 1 card, but you're getting another body out of it. So it's like, there's just so much advantage there. It's crazy. So I definitely wanted to have 3 of each of those in here. Tried with 2 Layla. I did like it. I don't think you have to have 3, but I liked it with 3 more. Again, I kind of wanted to keep the consistency as tight as I possibly could, because if I were to go to a tournament right now, I would absolutely run this deck. And then for dark forwards, this is the little bit that I'm a little bit unsure of. I'm going with 1 Camelot and 2 Nidhogg. I'm not, you know, I like having Camelot there because it's a really, really good defense against monocolored decks, and it's a threat that has to be answered, and it searches Nidhogg at the same time. I don't know if 2 Nidhogg is necessary, but I quite liked being able to have it and there being another one available if the first one were to die, because you'd be surprised how often you could play 2 Nidhogg. But you know, there are plenty of options, like maybe you'd want to have like a Chaos in here so the Camelot has a search target outside of Nidhogg. There's lots of different things that you could do, but I definitely think you want at least 1 Nidhogg, just because that play of Rinoa Nidhogg is so powerful. And because we're running Devout in here, Rinoa can be something you discard to pay for Nidhogg, and then Nidhogg gets its effect, which is devastating on its own, and then you just devout the Rinoa straight back out of your break zone and then do it again, and it's like, okay, there's not a lot your opponent's going to be able to do after you've removed from the game 2 cards from their hand at random and 2 of their forwards. There's not a lot they're going to help to be able to come back from that. So honestly, I think Nidhogg and Rinoa, with the backbone of the draw engine through Bran, Viking, Gladiator, there's so many little bits, and then you're warding them off by having them discard cards through your Thaumaturges, your Genesis, your Edwards. There's so many, Glacial Avalanche, there's so many ways in which you just slow your opponent down enough that you can just go in for the kill. It's crazy, and I love it. This is honestly my favourite deck I've played in ages. Now the backups are quite nice because I've actually kind of already covered a lot of what I want the backups to do by talking about them in the forwards. But then we've got Harley and Edward. Now Harley and Edward aren't commonly seen in duo coloured plus decks. They're seen quite a lot in mono ice. And honestly, you probably could change these if you wanted to, but I really like it because a 2 CP backup that makes that 1 CP advantage swing so powerful early game in this deck can like swing things in your favour so heavily. So a turn 1 Harley means that at some point you are more than likely going to play an Edward, and just for 1 CP comes in, Europe's back up, they're a card down, you've been playing your Thaumaturges, they're still cards down, it slows them down, and that's what I really want to do with this deck. I want to make sure that I don't get aggroed too early. However, with this deck, you should expect to take at least a couple of points of damage early in the game. Obviously you can get quite fortunate if you've got Thaumaturges down early to block for you, or if you get Viking down quite quickly so that you can block and it's still giving you advantage, and you play a Layla, and then the whole shtick just starts going off. It's just really, really good. So I definitely wanted Harley and Edward in here. Devout, again, I think, I've spoken about Devout already with many of the forwards in the deck, but I think that the ability to just grab Rinoa whenever you want, to grab Genesis whenever you want, to grab Vayne whenever you want, to grab Layla whenever you want, is like, put it in the break zone, grab 2 guys and draw a card. That's really good, and I've just really loved it. And then Flan, you know, I'll talk about Flan or Flan, however you want to pronounce it, along with Sid from World of Final Fantasy, because I think that having that extra engine of discard and draw is really nice. Flan is both an advantage generator and a discard engine, and I thought that having the Sid would help that, and it just kind of, it's a 2 CP backup that, you know, you can break at any time because you're going to have a Flan in your break zone at some point, and it, you know, it might as well just say break it so your opponent discards a card at that point. And I just really like the card. You know, 1 Sid, 3 Flan, whatever. You can really accumulate advantage just through that. And then with the water backups, Scholar makes just so much sense in this deck. It's ridiculous because there are so many things that benefit from it. Thaumaturge, Viking, Layla, Cloud of Darkness, Sid Reigns, Rinoa. There's tons. It makes so much sense to be in here. And as a 2 CP backup, I don't think there's any better one that you could play in this particular deck, because like Astrologian is nice, but I don't think that, you know, you're trying to get loads of guys out, so if Ice is dying and freezing 1 or 2 of them, it shouldn't matter too much. But then I you know, it's a choice thing. 2 Bran, because I think that having the extra EX burst is nice, obviously, and then having a searcher for both Thaumaturge and Viking is quite important. Like, you want to get Viking in your hand pretty early. Even if you don't use it straight away, you can discard it so that you can get Layla back. You can get it back with Layla. Gladiator, very much the same reason as Bran, so that you can just get those standard units and get them the flow going as soon as you can. And then Merlwyb, I did try Ysayle as well, because I felt that being able to search up Rinoa was important, but I actually found that searching up Cloud of Darkness, Viking or Layla, as much as there are less options in water, having them is more important, so I decided to go with the Merlwyb over Ysayle, but I wanted an extra searcher either way. And then with the summons actually in this deck fit it so perfectly that it makes me really happy. Like Glacial Abolus, it's a discard engine, it's light removal, it works really well with Sid Reigns, it can get things out of the way for you to get that final push, and it just does so much work in this deck. I've not seen many other people who run like Vikings or Rinoa running Glacier, but I think that for my version of it, where I'm trying to slow them down quite heavily, it works really, really well for me. Matthias the Corrupt is something that I actually didn't initially put in the deck, purely out of forgetfulness, if I'm quite honest. But one of my friends, Chris, who lives in Australia, so shout out to him, showed me his version of the deck, which I believe he actually topped in one of the cups in Australia, and he did really, really well with it. So I'm really, you know, glad to see that this deck actually does do very well. He showed me that Matthias goes in here, and I'm like, oh my god, I can't believe I didn't think of that, because all of your guys are tiny. So if you're attacking with a Viking, your opponent's ordinarily just going to block it, let you draw your card and carry on. But if you're running Matthias, then your Vikings and your Thaumaturges are actual threats. So it makes a lot of sense for Matthias to be in here, and I can't believe I didn't think about it in the first place, quite honestly. And then Leviathan is something that I've not seen anybody else running, but I honestly, it's one of those cards that I wrote off really, really badly. I was just like, no, I'm not interested in this. But quite honestly, it's done so much work in this deck, I would actually consider putting this card to 3. Like, this is the Leviathan where both players lift a card out of their field back to their hand, and because of the removal and the hand removal that you have present in this deck, you'd be absolutely stunned at how much work this puts in and how much of an advantage it generates you. At worst, like, if it's an EX burst, there is the very, very minimal chance that you're not going to get to activate it. But if you have no forwards out, then you're probably losing the game anyway, because you need to get forwards out in this deck very quickly, because a lot of your synergies and combos rely on you having at least 1 forward out, and Leviathan helps with that. And, you know, having the removal, and then if it's in your turn and you cast, say, you know, it means you get extra uses out of Rinoa for a start. You can lift their guy, and say they've got no hand, and like 2 forwards on the board. You lift your Rinoa while you have a Nidhogg in play, and their guy, you then replay the Rinoa and then flash the Nidhogg out and in, and you get rid of both of their forwards, essentially. It's like, it's costly, but it's not at the same time. And, you know, if you lift a Viking, then you draw cards. If you lift Thaumaturge, then you may be able to just get a cheap removal and discard the card out of their hand entirely. If you use it on Sid Reigns, then you get the extra discard. Like, it does a lot in this deck. So if you've not tried it, I would very, very heavily encourage you to try Leviathan. You might not like it as much as I do, but I honestly, every time I've played it, it's put in a ton of work. So as I said, with the general game plan of the deck is to get as many forwards as you can down as quickly as you can. Now, the only weakness that I think that this deck truly has is Shantotto, or something that has mass removed from the games, because you have a lot of interactions with your break zone here through Gladiator and Lila, and you don't really want your stuff getting removed from the game. This is another reason that I think Leviathan's actually really good in this deck, because you can lift your guy back to your hand as well as theirs to dodge some of that. Like, you'd use it on your Viking because then it allows you to recover that much quicker. Like, you can lose a Rinoa and it'd be fine. You can lose a Layla and it'd be fine. You can even lose a Nidhogg and it'd be fine if you're running two of him. And then, you know, you can set back up again. But Shantotto is a big issue for this deck, so just be very careful of Shantotto. And if you're playing against an Earth build, just be a little bit more reserved about what you're doing. Concentrate on just having the Layla and the Vikings down, because look, you will still draw the card. If Shantotto is what removes it, just be careful. That being said, I've played against Mono Ice, I've played against Mono Lightning, I've played, you know, when I've been at these events, I've played multiple different people with this deck, and it's been really, really successful so far. I'm really hoping that at some point I can show you some gameplay footage of this deck. I know I've been wanting to do gameplay footage for a while. I just need someone who's willing to come on camera with me and actually play the game, and someone who knows the game well, and so that I can showcase the fact that this deck definitely actually works. Like, I'm really, really proud of this, and, you know, I really hope that you guys enjoy it as much as I do. So that's going to be it for this video, and I wanted to just say thank you to everybody that's been watching and everybody that's come and visited me at the various events I've been doing. I'm really proud of the fact that my channel has evolved me to a point where I can now travel around and do these kind of events, and I can showcase a game that I really enjoy, and I'm, you know, being recognised by people you know, come to these events. It's really crazy to me. So thank you ever so much to everyone that's come to visit, and with this deck I really, really, truly hope that you enjoy it. Do subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I do want to say thank you as well to everybody that supports me on Patreon, and if you haven't done that, then that's no worries, but I will leave a link in the description box below in case you want to check that out. And then soon I'll be hoping to come up with even more deck archetypes and stuff, so if you have any suggestions for me, or things that you've found in Opus 6 or beforehand that are really cool and you want to show to the world, then leave a comment or send me a message over Facebook or Twitter or any of those things, and come and join in with me, and we'll just all chill out together and talk about cards and just, you know, lay one out. It'll be really good fun. So thanks very much for watching, and I'll speak to you again soon. See you later. Bye now.